Big bet last night. In fact, I want to give it out right now as my best bet.
Give it out.
All right, position of first drafted player, Kansas City Chiefs, -130, wide receiver. This is probably going to be my biggest draft bet. I don't know if you guys saw what happened with Rashee Rice.
Yes.
Yeah, you saw that.
Something about some cleats and a trunk.
Yeah. So,
Which I'm not sure why that's such a big deal, but it is.
It was a whole big mess, what went down. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe he just gets a slap on the wrist and he's out there week one. They also obviously signed Hollywood Brown, but I think that they're probably going to have to go with a wide receiver for Mahomes after what went down yesterday. So -130 is the price. Chiefs to draft a wide receiver. There it is. There's my best bet for the night.
That's it?
For the like the good old days, Steve.
I'm more surprised, I think, that the Astros are 0-4. I mean, they've been so good for so long. We sort of take for granted that they're going to be in the ALCS, and I think this year there was still a lot of that same thought that they would be at the top of the AL West, and the Yankees, for all of the injury problems with Garrett Cole and DJ LeMahieu and all of that, came in there and just slapped them around on their own home field, winning 4 straight there in Houston. So I think the Yankees are going to be good with Juan Soto there leading the way.
Yeah.
But for Houston to be, as bad as they looked in that opening series, I think that was maybe one of the biggest bad surprises that we saw in the opening weekend of baseball.
LSU still is the bigger team. Like a lot bigger and a lot tougher. And Iowa's length is gone with Cesano. That was the only real big girl that they had inside. They're very undersized. I think there's a little bit of the Kim Mulkey effect, right? I think Kim Mulkey is obviously problematic, and there's a lot happening right now with the Washington Post article and the LA Times article. I think she's going to be very fired up, and I think her team is going to be very fired up too. Also, Haley Van Lith has been absolutely awful. She's due to have a good game at some point. Defensively, just horrendous, but offensively, they're going to need to get a big game from her. If LSU can hit threes like they did in this matchup last time early, this thing could get out of hand fast. Remember, LSU beat Iowa by 15 last year. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a rout or anything, but Iowa's a worse team than they were last year. And, yeah, that's a good point. And you mentioned just the coaching battles. And I think the coaching battle that I'm super excited to see and really fascinated to see how both coaches try to strategize this matchup is Nate Oates and Dan Hurley, two of the best in the business. In your mind, I mean, you know these guys better than most. What do you think the strategies for Nate Oates will be, and what do you think Dan Hurley has up his sleeve?
Well, I know what they're already doing. They're very similar. You got to realize these dudes have known each other. Think about it. They each kind of made each other's careers in a way. Okay, so Nate was a high school coach at Romulus in Detroit, and he sent Dan Hurley when he was the head coach at Rhode Island, a kid named E.C. Matthews, that helped Dan Hurley get rolling. He was like a top 50 recruit, kind of helped him get this whole thing going at URI, which in turn helped him get the UConn, right? Well, because of their relationship, when Bobby Hurley, who was then the assistant for Danny at URI, left and took the job at Buffalo, he took Nate with him as his assistant. Bobby got the head job at Arizona State. Nate got promoted, got the head job, does really well, and it gets the Alabama job. So these guys know each other well, and they're very similar. They're going to use everything they can to motivate their guys. Dan Hurley said it earlier today, I think, on Colin Cowherd's show. He's like, we make shit up. We make stuff up from other coaches and other players to tell our players that they said that you're not good at this or whatever. You can't guard or you're not athletic or whatever it is. Nate Oates, same thing. Now, Nate Oates isn't going to have to make anything up, Trista, because everything he hears is going to be, you're going to be lucky to keep it within 20. But they're both wear their emotions in the sleeve. They'll say anything. They both now have Dan Hurley's really changed over the last couple of years and gone from this grinding type coach that just wants to out-tough you and play defense and culture to, he told me before, listen, when I lost to New Mexico State 2 years ago in the first round of the tournament and lost scoring 50-something points, It's like, I know I had to change. So we changed our whole philosophy, and we went with skilled guys and shooters. And they know it's look at the way they play. Up, down, shoot three. Do not shoot any twos. No mid-range twos, either at the basket or launch threes.
You think they try to play zone against UConn, Alabama?
I think they'll mix it up. I think you got to mix it up if you're Nate Oates. You can't make those guys. You can't make it easy for them because they'll carve you up. I mean, they're more talented anyway. They're disciplined. Alabama's not. Like when I saw Alabama a month ago, I walked away being like, I can't believe Nate has done this good a job. Because at that point, they were fighting for an SEC regular season title. I was like, I don't know how they've done it. I mean, Marcio's a nice player, but, like, he's been awesome this year. He's carried that group. And their top three players, think about it, their top three players are mid-major transfers. Sears was Ohio, Grant Nelson, North Dakota State, Aaron Estrada, Hofstra. Those are their three best players. It's amazing. Think about it. He lost his whole staff from last year. He lost Bediako, who was supposed to come back, and he was a G League guy, two-way guy. Obviously, Brandon Miller, you knew was gone. And same thing with Noah Clowney. But then they lost Javon Quinterly. They're kind of starting backcourt mate of.
And this is really interesting because the number's 11.5 to Alabama. I would imagine book need is going to be Alabama, but the line has not moved.
Right. Well, it's early, too, and a lot of people are just trying to, digest this still. We got a few days till Saturday, but I think you're right. I think if this line doesn't go up, I'll be kind of surprised if it doesn't go up more. I know some books open 11.5. I think there was one that opened 11 over the weekend and actually backed up, which I was stunned by. Briefly went back to 10.5, but then even that book corrected and went up to 11.5, Trista. Look, at BetMGM, the early action is pretty tilted toward UConn. This is from their data that they sent earlier today from John Ewing, and it's basically 2-1 tickets on the spread, 4-1 money on the spread. Now they're taking Alabama on the money line, and that makes sense. That's kind of a trend that's been going on throughout the tournament. More so with NC State than anybody. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But they're taking Alabama early on the money line, liking that big plus money price. It's like plus 5.25, I think, right now, which is pretty juicy. But in the money line parlays, they're not taking Bama. UConn's going to be in the money line parlay. Purdue's going to be in the money line parlay. That's some of what took place over these last few days. These favorites were lined up in money line parlays, and UConn's just a wagon to get in front of. And to your point, Trista, about being 10-0 straight up at ATS in their last two NCAA tournaments now. Not only have they won every game by double digits, but in 8 of those 10 games, they've covered the spread by double digits, which is kind of another level of this, I think, and it's just amazing, honestly.